Okay, so it has now been 24 hours since I have collected the materials and recorded the video on how I want to put together this unit, and it's given me some time to think about how I want to approach this unit. And so I decided that rather than doing this unit based on days or weeks, I am going to just do it based on lessons, because we are really close to the summer and we have a bit more of a flexible schedule, and I don't intend to homeschool in the summer, but I also don't want to have a rigorous schedule right now. So I am going to be doing about two lessons approximately with the rainforest and tropical forest, and I got our project. And what's going to take a little bit more time is actually going through this Botany Main Lesson book in order to figure out how I'm going to set up these lessons. So I'm thinking probably about 5 lessons, but that doesn't equal 5 days. And then one other project, which is making paper, plus this one right here, which I want to do some of the projects in this. All right, so it's a lot of talk and a lot of thought and not a lot of work. And that is really the process I go through when I am putting together our units. There's a lot of mental work that goes into it, and clearly that's difficult to show on video. So you're seeing a lot of the same things, and I'm saying a lot of the same things as well. And that's just because I need to go through that process in my head. And then the final process is when I actually write it down, which means that that comes at the end of a lot of thought and a lot of working things out in my head. And so I don't have a camera inside my brain to show you that process. So I really just have to talk to you about it. And that's what we're doing now. All right, so let me get to my book here. This is a composition book that I used in the past just to write out notes for different unit studies. And so I'm going to go ahead and just start to scribble down some notes for this particular unit, and then I will probably transfer that into the computer and have that available for you in case you want to follow along or do something similar. So I had to switch out my pen because this one was gray and I wanted this orange color. Yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of procrastination that goes on in this whole process. What can I say? Time to get started. All right, so I wrote out the books and the resources that we're going to use. I also included the rainforest kit from Nature Watch, as well as the paper making kit, which was from Acorn Naturalist. And now I'm just going to add my supplies because I'm going to go through this book right here. And I know that there are things that we're going to need. We probably already have them, like carrots and I think some food coloring. Oh, that's pretty. Do you want to do that? That is really pretty. What? Let's try doing that with our herbs, but then how would we take it out? That would be kind of difficult. But you know what? If we used a mason jar, that could be kind of cute. I don't know. Let me think about it. All right, so now I have written out some of the supplies that I'll need, and really these are things that I pretty much have already, so I just want to be mindful of holding on to these things, like, well, actually I don't have celery, but I have everything else. And for the potatoes and onions and carrots, it's just a matter of remembering to keep a piece of that so that I can grow it. And sometimes we have potatoes and onions that are kind of ready to toss anyway, but when we throw them out into our compost, they grow. So no surprise there. So I just want to make sure I put those aside so that we can have those ready for our different projects, which we can start right away. Okay, so that I basically went through this book, and that is how I figured out what supplies we needed. There are some things that I am eager to try that we haven't done before. And that's to take the dirt that you find on the bottom of your shoe and try to grow it. But I think that in order to do that, we would need to go on a couple of nature hikes when it's semi-muddy and really get a good sampling to bring back home and try out. But that is something that I thought, here it is, would be kind of interesting. I've seen that in other nature books as something kind of fun to do. Also, something that I did not show in the video on how to put together this unit is this leaf print kit that we got, I want to say a year ago, that we keep meaning to try to use and we haven't yet. So I'm going to pull that out and see if we can finally get some use out of that. So this was actually kind of the easy part. The hard part is actually going to be going through this main lesson book and assembling the lessons that we want to do. Because while the beginning of the book is a lot more user-friendly, I find that the later parts are not as user-friendly. And you can see this beautiful form drawing in here, and I would like an opportunity to do this form drawing in our lessons. And so my thoughts are, rather than doing a lesson just on form drawing, I think that bordering our pages as we do them with form drawing might look really beautiful. It's a thought. Although that would look really nice. That would look really nice as like a wallpaper border. And this is the whole process, showing you really just the thought process behind it, of toying with an idea. Like, do I want to do this as its own lesson? Do I want to do it as part of another lesson? I have to think through that because I'm not sure. All right, let's get back to work. All right, so this is one of the entries in the botany book, and I thought instead of drawing these different shapes, I thought it'd be really neat to do this out of either modeling beeswax or out of the ultralight clay by Sculpey, the oven baked clay that I've been loving lately. And I think that might be a nice hands-on project to do, because we don't do a lot of modeling with our modeling beeswax. We usually use it for other projects, so I think being able to do that will be a lot of fun. And if we do it with the oven baked clay, we could actually assemble it together as a flower. And what we could do then is do a life cycle of a plant. Yeah, kind of like the ones that we do. I'll just bring you all the way up. This is what the schoolroom looks like these days. And you can't see it because none of the lights are on. It's all the way in that corner over there. And that is the life cycle of a butterfly. And we've done them for the bees as well. And maybe we can do one for plants. It's an idea. Again, this is what goes on in my head when I'm planning. Yep. So we already did the horsetail. We went up to conifers. Let me just jump to where we're supposed to be, rather than backtracking. Conifers, we did conifers. Oh, that's so pretty. Oh, I really want to do this as a watercolor, or maybe, I don't know. I love drawing trees. So pretty. All right, higher plants. This is where we left off. So I believe these are the bulb plants that have the 6-fold geometry. This is also a good opportunity for us to add a geometry lesson in here. And while I already have a video on the 6th division and the 12th division of a circle, I might do another video specifically on how it relates to botany for this lesson. So that might be good. You see, we don't have very many pages left to do. Bulbs and lilies. And then this is the one that I'm most excited to do. These would be the grains, and there's a really beautiful entry. Oh, I already put Botanicum away. I gotta go get Botanicum. So a really beautiful entry in Botanicum that I want to use as drawing inspiration for this part. That's really pretty too. All right, I'm going to continue. All right, so at the back of the book, there are some poems and some other things related to this lesson that, unless you actually get to the back of the book, you're going to miss out on some of those things that really should be introduced throughout, like having a nice poem to kind of take you through the entire lesson. And I don't want to use either of these. There's another one that I would prefer. So let's go on a field trip. That is a broom. Yes. What can I say? All right, let's go in here. Let me move this here because it never really had a proper home. Oh, it's going to be so dark, but let me take you in here anyway. Here's our nature bin that has a lot of the supplies that we are using for our nature study and these kinds of lessons. And I am looking for, here it is, I'm looking for a book in here. and this is it. It's called Poetry. I love that title. All right, so we are going to go into poetry. We read this a couple of years ago, and there is a poem in here that I really, really, really liked. And I flagged it, but I can't remember which one it is. So I'm going to go through this and see if I can find the one that I really enjoyed, and we'll add that to our unit. All right, so I found the poem that I like, but I think that this one works better for the fall season. And so I am going to go to, nope, not that page. I think it's this page. I think we'll read this one a couple of times for our unit. All right, so I went ahead and I wrote down the poem, I wrote down the page numbers, I also wrote down form drawing and how to refer to it in the main lesson book. I also was toying with the idea of using a resist pen, maybe for this one. So drawing it with pencil first, but then using a resist pen over it, and then doing kind of a variegated color within each leaf using watercolor, and then doing the background in either a white or a different color. Thought that would be a fun twist on the form drawing, and gives my child two opportunities to do the form drawing, once with the pencil line and then again with the resist pen. So I added that to my list of supplies right here, because I have some, but I might need to get some more, and that stuff was really expensive. So we got it from Michael's. I haven't found it anywhere else, and it was like $18. So gotta look out for one of those coupons and then add that to my list. And so at least now I know what to look for if I am driving by Michael's. And then this one also would be fun to do. I really don't like the dark background, but I like the idea of the flowers, but I actually like the leaves better, because I think that you could get, well, I don't know, you can get a lot of color this way too. So that is how slowly the process is. That's just the way it is. All right, so I'm reading this section on bulbs, and I came to the part about the onions somewhere in here. I did read it. And we also have a microscope, so I was thinking maybe we can take the skin of an onion. I'm not even sure if my microscope can do this. I don't know, because I don't have any of those little glass plates for them. But anyway, my idea is maybe to look at it underneath a microscope. So I'm going to go ahead and add that over here, so that I remember that that is something that I thought of while going through the lesson on bulbs. Actually, first, maybe I will write out the different lessons. We know we want one on bulbs and lilies, one on grasses and grains. So I'm going to go ahead and I might not have enough space here for all of them. So I'm going to just start that and then write in the things that I want to do with each of those lessons. All right, so the whole lesson on bulbs and lilies is under monocots or monocotyledon. I really don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's how I've been saying it for years. So I went ahead and I wrote that down right here, and then it reminded me that I had a book that had a really good little a drawing on that. So up out of my chair again, that broom is still there. Going back to my bin on with nature things, and this is the book that I was looking for, or that I remembered. And I know that there's a really good entry in here. Actually, this whole book is probably going to be useful, but I do know that there was something that will be helpful. Where is it? I'm going to look for it and I'll show you. All right, so I can't find the thing that I needed from this book, so it must be in another one. So off to the bookcase. All right, so I can't find it here. And so maybe, did I leave it in here? Oh, actually, Since I'm here, I might as well pull this one out, because that's this leaf collecting kit that I wanted. And nope. All about seeds. Nope. Not in here. So maybe it's over here. All right. I put the camera down and go look for the book that I'm looking for. All right, so I didn't find the book that I was looking for, which is kind of irritating, but I did pull this one out, which I don't think there's a ton that I need to use from this book, except I do want the pages on the onion. Oh, yeah, there we go. We have some onions in our pantry that look like that, so that's perfect. And the potatoes, and we've already been growing potatoes for a while outside, but I would like to grow them, you know, purposefully inside, not just in my pantry. And this is, I think, what it looks like under the microscope, which is something that I wanted to do if it works with the onion. And take you back to the bookcase originally, because I found that book that I was looking for, and it was tucked between a bunch, oh, you can't see that anyway, it's tucked between a bunch of these one small square books, but this is the one that I want, and it's called How Do Apples Grow? All right, so I went ahead and I wrote down some info, just ideas for the monocotyledons, and there's a couple of lessons in here, bulbs and lilies, grasses and grains, and I thought that it would also be a good opportunity to add some geography into this lesson and study the stable grains from different regions, and as a fun perk, because we love going to the kitchen whenever possible, is to maybe do some recipes from those different regions. So I'm going to take a break now, and I've got some company coming over, so I'm going to go prepare food and clean the house, and I'll get back to this a little bit later in the day or tomorrow. All right, so it's been about 2 days since I last lesson planned, and in that time we've actually done a ton of these projects. So this is really just kind of what happens on occasion, is that if I don't get to getting this all done before our unit actually starts, we start with the things that we can start with. And so we've already read this book and part of this book, and we've done this project, and we'll do it again because there's lots of supplies. And we made paper yesterday, we grew some root vegetables. Well, actually we harvested them and then we pulled off the tops and then replanted them. We're growing avocado, we are growing onion, potatoes, and carrots and ginger, and we still need to do the grapevine twigs. We want to grow those in water as well. So we made paper. Did I say that? I forgot. We made paper. So we want to continue, and we started with the leaf printing as well. So we've already started doing a lot of that before I was even done lesson planning. And the thing is that's going to happen, especially since these are going to be somewhat progressive projects that are going to require us to get started on them sooner than later, because we won't be able to see the growth of these different things if we don't get them started. So even though this unit may only last a week or two, those things we're going to be observing for a while. So at this point, I am going to work on our lesson on onions and bulbs and those kinds of things, and then just quickly finish writing down a rough outline of some of the other lessons that we want to do. Otherwise, this is just going to drag on, far too long. And we also want to get to the remainder of these projects. We want to go and observe how they're doing, take some pictures of them, and also continue with our paper making, because it takes a couple of days to do that since the paper needs to dry for about a day or so. And it was kind of cool last night, so I think by now it's mid-afternoon. I think that paper is ready to be worked with, and maybe we can do some of our leaf printing on them, because we did that as a 2-part project with the leaf printing. All right, so it's a whole day later, and we did not do a whole lot yesterday. And so we need to do a whole lot today. And so I'm going to continue with the lesson planning, but at the same time, we're still going to be doing our lessons, because that's what we're going to be working on today. What we're going to do is we're going to read this book, and I already started to read it so that if my kids decided they didn't want to read it or listen to it, I could just orally narrate some of the passages, but it's such a beautiful book. I'm really hoping that they'll enjoy it. The beginning part is written in a really engaging way, so I am hoping that's going to keep them interested for the remainder of the book. So I'm going to hand this over to my son, and I'm going to ask him to start reading this aloud. Can you read that aloud? While I listen and continue lesson planning.
The tree branched and the frog went.
Oh, that's the second page. Go back to the first page. There's an introduction on the first page. I mean, there's the first page.
Call it a piggyback ride, call it a leapfrog, call it hide and seek. Just don't call it what the dart pointed frog does, a game. When they were all aboard, she hopped over a giant tree and leapt onto its bark. Up she climbed, carrying her young. Her bright colors warned the frog eaters to stay away from her deadly poison.
All right, so let's talk about lesson planning distraction. I was reading up on potatoes. I'm not sure why. I was looking for bulbs and onions. Anyway, I got to reading this and found it really interesting. And in the meanwhile, my son and my daughter are playing a game. So he stopped reading and they're playing. So yeah, that's what happens sometimes. Yeah. Okay, so I'm on to natural world, and I think there's only one section in here that's going to be helpful, and it's something that we've previously done. So I might put this book aside and dive into Botanicum next. This book had just a really nice image of the way the seeds are germinated and how they grow. I'm going to find that page for you. This is the one, The Secret Life of Plants, and we did this one in a project previously, so I don't think we're going to do that right now. And I really, really like this section here. It's all about trees and the different leaves. This works really well with our leaf printing or leaf album that we have. But again, I think I'm going to save this. This will be so much fun for the fall. We don't have a lot of deciduous trees around here, but at least it'll be fun to get the ones that we do have and explore some of these different types of leaf combinations. All right, so let me grab Botanicum and let's continue. This is distraction and procrastination. We're on to Botanicum. It's a really, really beautiful book, and I know there's a section in here on grasses and grains. Oh, I think I just passed it. And I really want this to be one of our first lessons, and so or does bulbs come first? Look at me not remembering. I'm gonna go ahead and just read this up right now, and just because I'm interested in it right now and the kids are playing, and so that's what we're gonna do right now. I'm gonna read this to myself, and I'm gonna have my son continue reading the rainforest book. So I just finished reading this section here, and while there is some interesting information, especially about the acorn wheat, which we actually have and use, which is really neat that it's mentioned here as one of the ancient grains, I didn't find this section to have enough information for what I wanted to do for this particular lesson. We are going to use the artwork as art inspiration, and there is a good section here about the history of corn. There's actually a little bit about the history of the corn, rice, and wheat, but I just need a little bit more. So I'm going to refer back to the ABCs of Nature, read up on that section, and start to put together our lesson on grasses and grains. So I read these 2 pages on grasses and grains and found them all really interesting. And still no more lesson planning, just a little bit tired and lazy and just really enjoying reading these different sections. So I'm going to finally dive back into the main lesson book and start looking up some of the things that I'm actually supposed to be preparing for these lessons, starting with bulbs and lilies. Was that the first one? That was the first lesson. I kind of jumped ahead. I skipped bulbs and lilies and went on to the lesson on grasses and grains. But we're going to go back to bulbs and lilies. This is an opportunity for a geometry project, so I want to add that in if I haven't already. Looks like I haven't yet, so I want to add that in right here.
Pond is a place to use the tail, grow legs, and turn into a grown-up dark poison frog.
All right, so it's been another day, and the planning is not completely done. Today is Saturday, and on Monday I recorded the video on how to put together this unit. So a lot has happened in these last 5 days, including a number of lessons, even though we are not done lesson planning. So what we decided to do this morning is just dive into our lesson on monocots. And in order to do that, we needed to backtrack just a little bit. And we actually started out, and this lesson ended up being really long. I think over an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes of us just talking and beginning the whole process by reviewing, starting with fungi. We reviewed mushrooms and fungi, and I read a lot of these passages, and we also talked a lot about this before we could actually get to flowering plants, because we had to review, and also this is a review from last year, all the things that came up to that point where we were talking about flowering plants. So we reviewed fungi and lichen and algae and mosses. We kind of skimmed over ferns and horsetail and conifers, and then we finally got to the point where we could talk about flowering plants, and that's the point where I was talking about monocots and dicots. So we kind of started by looking at both those different types, those two main archetypal plants, and then focused on grasses and grains. And so we've actually done a lot of these lessons, and yet we're not done lesson planning. So at this point, I am going to finish probably another page of lesson planning notes, and then I am going to do my best to transfer that to the computer so that it is shareable. And then we're going to get to some of the artistic parts of these lessons. So far, we've done a lot of the projects and the hands-on projects and activities, but we also want to do some of the written activities. And I don't want to do a lot of writing for this because our previous unit had a ton of writing, and I think at this point in the year, my kids are a little bit done with that, and it's going to be nice to do this with a more artistic angle. And so I'm looking forward to drawing a lot of these different things that we're studying. We do have these kinds of poppies in our backyard, so I would like to either draw them from nature, which will be really challenging in my opinion, or just, copy this into on watercolor paper, and then add it to our main lesson book that we started last year. I can easily add some more pages to this main lesson book. So I'm thinking that that's probably going to be the best way to go, so that we don't have a new main lesson book, and really that makes it a more complete main lesson book, since that was still part of our botany lessons. We finished doing our rainforest lessons, and they were really simple. They involved reading 2 different books and doing the rainforest project, which my daughter made for me. You can't see it. Which my daughter made for me. So she made me a bracelet, so very pleased with that one. I would like to do more with this because I think there are some lessons, some artistic lessons that we could do with this, but I'm not going to focus on this at this point. We read the 2 books, we talked about them a little bit, not much, and that's good enough for me, because I want to spend the rest of the time doing our other botany lessons, and especially our projects for the rest of this unit. So I'm going to continue doing some lesson planning, and let's see how that goes. I'm writing down all of these lesson plans. They are not detailed, but at least it gives me direction on what I'm going to be doing for this unit. And then after this is all written down, I'm going to head to my computer and transfer these lesson plans into a shareable format. I am now in Google Sheets, and I'm going to create this lesson plan a little bit differently than I've done before in the past. This is not going to have any dates or days. This lesson plan is going to be more of a list. So I am now formatting my columns so that I've got a wide column to begin with, and then 2 shallow columns, and that's going to be for the date and the check mark box. And so I've left the dates blank. I'm probably not going to use them, but at least it's an option in case you want to write in the date that you complete these assignments and these projects. And I have room to say complete, so I'm just going to write done, and I'll add some check boxes below that. I love this feature. I learned about it from Michelle from A Common Life, and it's just come in so handy. And you can also check them off while you are in this program, but I'm just going to leave them blank and check them off when we print this off. So that first column has the books that we're going to use, and I really like this font that I'm using right now, but it's really hard to read it. So later I am going to change the font, even though this is really pretty. This doesn't end up being the most beautiful lesson plan. In the end, you'll see that the columns are all different lengths, but at least it gets the job done. Once I write in all of the books, I am going to put some resources below that, but it does not need any check boxes for that. I'm just listing the resources that I'm using. Now it's time to move on to all of our hands-on projects and activities, and this is going to be a really long column because I'm going to list out everything that we're going to be doing. Even if it's something like root observation, I'm going to list out every root observation project we're going to do. And so we have an avocado and a potato. We have onion and ginger. And I'm going to do all of my spell checking at the end, and so there are going to be spelling errors, but it all gets taken care of at the very end before I print off this lesson plan. All right, so I've got most of those hands-on projects listed there. I do leave a couple of blank spaces in case I want to add a few more projects or books or lessons. I went ahead and I also added in the lessons as well as the review lessons. I am doing this lesson plan at the end of the week, which means we have already gotten started with this main lesson block, and so I already know that we've done some of those things. I went ahead and I just wrote them in because it's good to keep track of that, and so I went ahead and wrote them down. Had I not written them down ahead of time, I would have just filled them in some of the blank spaces that I have left below this lesson plan. That way I can kind of keep track of what we've done as well as also plan. So our lesson plans can be things that we plan to do, but you can also use it for record keeping. And here is the lesson plan all printed off. And you can see that I left some blank spaces here. I should have done a couple down here as well, so that we could add in some lessons and some of our art lessons as well. And I also unchecked all of them so that we could just check them off, or my kids could check them off just with a pencil. I don't think that I'm going to add in the dates, but I might. So this is now going to be the lesson plan that we are going to use. And if you want to have access to this lesson plan, it's going to be available on my website, and that link is down in the description box below. And if you want to see how this main lesson block is progressing, you can tap on the screen right now to see the complete playlist. And if you want to see what we're up to on a daily basis, don't forget that you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.